The press must ask, public voices must speak, and the American people must vote. Hello, my name's Brad Bartholomew, and the title of this video is Responsible Critical Thinking Americans, or CTA 2026 Quiz Number 2. During the 2024 election, we Americans spent over $15 billion on political campaigns. Yet the direct result of this was our society became more divided, distracted, and weaker. Let's make the 2026 midterm elections simpler. Let's bring clarity and purpose to our voting. And stop believing that the only way we can influence elections is by spending more money. Let's have the option of voting for traditional American values and ideas. Voting in America is both a constitutional right and a civic responsibility. It should not be treated as an endless pay-as-you-go fundraising contest relentlessly embraced by both and encouraged by both our political parties. And what is the first thing that awaits a newly elected congressional member? It's a briefing from their respective parties on how much they are expected to raise. When we created CTA 2026 Quiz Number 1, we were trying to accurately identify the MAGA mindset and those who support reckless MAGA leadership. We believe we accomplished that, but the secondary label we gave everyone else was not MAGA. It was weak, uninspiring, and defined people only by what they opposed. Yes, we want Americans to vote against reckless MAGA leadership, but that's only half the equation. We also need to give Americans something positive to vote for, a path forward that embraces two long-standing American traditions, a liberal democracy and conservative fiscal responsibilities. That is why we created the Responsible Critical Thinking Americans Quiz, or also known as CTA 2026 Quiz Number 2. Before designing the second quiz, I looked for the definition of two of our most important ideas, a liberal democracy and conservative fiscal values. A liberal democracy is a form of government in which citizens choose their leaders through free and fair elections, while constitutional laws protect individual rights and limit the power of those leaders. Its essential features include free, fair, and regular elections, majority rule combined with protection of minority rights, freedom of speech, religion, assembly, and the press, equality before the law, independent courts, checks and balances among branches of the government, peaceful transfer of power, government officials who are accountable to the public and subject to the law. Here, liberal refers to individual liberties and constitutional rights, not today's Democratic Party or the liberal side of American politics. A liberal democracy is a system in which the people elect their leaders, individual rights are protected, and no one, including the President of the United States, is above the law. And here is the definition I found for conservative fiscal values. Conservative fiscal values generally means believing that the government should manage public money cautiously and responsibly. This typically includes limiting unnecessary government spending, keeping taxes relatively low, avoiding excessive deficits and the national debt, requiring government programs to demonstrate their effectiveness, encouraging private enterprise and market-based solutions, saving for emergencies and planning for the long-term obligations. In plain language, government should live within its means, spend taxpayers' money carefully, and avoid passing unsustainable debt to future generations. Believe me, this is probably my number one concern about what world we're passing on to my granddaughters. I fear that when you look at history, many great civilizations fold or crumble from within because they get overextended and they can't pay for all their benefits. And I believe that's what's happening to America right now. Using these two definitions, we created a short 3-question second quiz. Just as in quiz number 1, every question requires a clear yes or no answer. Refusing to answer or avoiding the question is recorded as a hard no. Here are the 3 questions for CTA 2026 quiz number 2. 1. Do you believe in, respect, and pledge to support the two traditional American values of liberal democracy and conservative fiscal responsibilities? 2. Do you believe in and pledge to uphold liberal democracy, including free and fair elections, constitutional limits on government power, individual rights, equality before the law, individual courts and checks and balances, peaceful transfer of power, and the principle that no one is above the law? And number 3, do you believe in and pledge to practice conservative fiscal responsibility, including carefully managing taxpayer money, eliminating unnecessary spending, evaluating government programs for effectiveness, avoiding excessive deficits and debt, and planning responsibly for America's long-term obligations? These are not trick questions, nor are they intended to test whether someone belongs to the Republican or Democratic Party. They are designed to answer one essential question. Does this candidate or politician support both the democratic system that protects our freedoms and the fiscal responsibility necessary to protect our country's future? Here is how the two CTA 2026 quizzes work together. CTA 2026 quiz number 1 is the first test. It determines whether a politician or candidate supports reckless MAGA leadership. CTA 2026 quiz number 2 is the second test. It determines whether that person firmly supports the democratic and fiscal responsibility principles needed to be called a responsible, critical thinking American. If a politician or political candidate cannot answer yes to all 12 questions in quiz number 1, then that person is labeled supporting reckless MAGA leadership. If a politician or political candidate answers yes to all 12 questions in quiz 1 and answers yes to all 3 questions in quiz number 2, that person is labeled responsible, critical thinking American. A candidate must pass both quizzes to earn this positive label. Specifically, we hope CTA 2026 quizzes 1 and 2 become powerful tools that the free press can use to help unlock America's full potential. Yes, we are asking the free press, while we still have one, to move beyond the tired labels of Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, and liberals. Those labels continuously trigger division and anxiety without telling us what a candidate truly believes. We are asking the press to use 2 more accurate and descriptive labels. 1, supporting reckless MAGA leadership, or the second, responsible, critical thinking Americans. We are asking the free press to ask these 2 sets of questions of every politician and political candidate, and then report their answers to the American public using responsible journalistic standards. The goal of a conservative grandpa, a liberal Gen Zer, and Teddy is to persuade 2 out of 3 American voters to vote against candidates labeled as supporting reckless MAGA leadership and voting for candidates labeled as responsible, critical thinking Americans. For those of you who have not seen our CTA 2026 number 1 quiz, here is Ray Lynn reviewing those 12 questions from an earlier video.
Do you believe in, respect, and pledge to defend the following? 1, the U.S. Constitution. 2, the rule of law and due process. 3, the principle that no one is above the law. 4, separation of church and state. 5, 3 co-equal branches of government with checks and balances. 6, that ordering the U.S. military against U.S. citizens is unlawful. 7, that the events of January 6, 2021, and more recently, the violent and reckless tactics used by ICE are unlawful. 8, that Vladimir Putin is a dangerous adversary. 9, that Canada, Greenland, and European nations are our valuable friends and allies. 10, that America's security depends on being a trustworthy ally. Now the final 2 action questions. Remember, only yes or no answers. Will you vote against all candidates identified as MAGA in the 2026 federal, state, and local elections? And if elected to Congress, or as a citizen supporting those elected, will you vote on day 1 to impeach, convict, and permanently ban Donald J. Trump from any federal leadership position for behavior unbecoming of the President of the United States?
In closing, the bottom line is CTA 2026 is simple. Influential Americans must publicly endorse the critical thinking Americans movement. For the CTA 2026 to become an effective movement, 3 things must happen. 1, the free press must clearly identify which candidates support reckless MAGA leadership. 2, influential Americans must publicly endorse the critical thinking Americans movement. And 3, millions of ordinary Americans must decide that we do not like the direction of our country and vote accordingly. The press must ask, public voices must speak, and the American people must vote. This is CTA 2026. Watch 5, talk to 5. Safe landings, critical thinking Americans.